Hello, and welcome to the Bigger Than Us podcast. Today, I'd like to welcome Rock Robinson to our show. Rock is the co-founder and CEO of eCarra, a zero-emissions mobility platform that aims to reduce harmful emissions and accelerate the awareness of electric vehicles. Rock, how are you doing today?
I am doing great this morning. It's a beautiful day. We're hitting that beautiful North Texas fall weather finally. So it's a great morning being waken up by my 3-year-old daughter, and so I'm ready to go.
That's beautiful. Yeah, I think we're going to get our 5 days of fall. So, that's how it goes.
Love it, love it. It's been really nice. I mean, North Texas gets brutal sometimes, but this 70-degree stuff is like super nice.
It is. So, Rock, I like to start the show off with something interesting about my guest that most people don't know about you. So, what would you like to share with the audience?
A lot of people don't know that I'm a 100% a nerd. Like, I consider myself this, outwardly, you wouldn't think that, people sometimes look at outwardly things and determine or judge. But I spend a lot of time just learning and growing and reading about um, STEM type projects and space. I want to go to space someday. And so, as we were talking a little bit earlier, I feel like, going to space is probable if we can survive the next 20 years and we can live longer. And so, um, yeah, I'm a nerd who likes to sometimes ride Harley. So it's kind of
Well,
weird.
I appreciate that because I'm a nerd too, and there was a time in life where I kind of shied away from that, but I lean into it very very heavily now, especially now that I have children. I actually want them to see that side of me more because I'm trying to influence the nerdiness in them. So here's to nerds, and nerds have become very cool over the last few years. So welcome.
Totally. Thank you. I'm glad to be here. Thanks for having me.
So Rock, can you give me a brief background on Inkara?
Yeah, for sure. So, a few years ago, well, let me just kind of give you a little bit of backstory. I came out of the car business slash people business, I'd say, and a few years ago, my good friend, co-founder Kevin Shea, we decided to kind of go into these different spaces. So he went to work for Uber, and I went to work for Apple. And the whole idea for doing that was just trying to let's figure out like what's next in our culture. We were always thinking in that space,
Mm-hmm.
and so as he was working with Uber, he had this 2016 Passat that was in beautiful shape, and he did about 5,000 rides, and each one of those rides were about a 5-star, 4.9-star ride. And it was really because of the presence that he had in the car. So one day he
Mm-hmm.
said to me, he goes, I got an idea. I was like, what is it? He said, what if we go to the dealerships? Because we knew the background with, you know, the car market and manufacturers and dealers. And so what if we go to these guys and, guarantee them that we bring them referral business if we could do something with the cars and then monetize them in a real demo platform instead of just driving around being wasteful. Let's use those cars to monetize in a rideshare environment. And I thought, man, that's a great idea. So we had this really about a year worth of research, and we came up with this idea called Ride Brand. And
Mm-hmm.
that's what I think a lot of the other guys, I'd say, in the rideshare business, this is kind of what we were thinking, just elevating the experience. But after doing a lot of the research, we knew that, wait a minute, these cars are going to die. Like, there is no long term life for a combustion engine.
Mm-hmm.
So, we were at this quandrum like, how do we start a business that we want to scale that we can already see that it's going to die? Like, it makes no sense at all. So, we got to go. I looked at him and I go, the only way we do this is if it's 100% electric. And he goes, what do you mean? I go, we have to be committed to be 100% electric. We have to commit to reduce emissions, and we have to commit to helping people understand what electrification is. And he goes,
Mm-hmm.
great. I think it's great. And so we did another year of research, and then that is where the fire really began to grow in us. And we saw so many problems. It became a passion project from that because we saw the detriment of our world as it pertains to climate change and carbon emissions. And so
Hmm.
now I look at it as we almost have to do it. It makes no sense not to.
So one of the obvious questions that you've probably heard 100 times, or if not more, is that how is eCarra different from some of the current rideshare programs out there?
That's a good question. So fundamentally, our approach to this is number one, 100% emissions free. So that's the
Hmm.
biggest thing. Then that's the thing that we want people to embrace and copy. Like we're not threatened by that. We're encouraged by that.
Hmm.
That's the biggest thing. The other thing is you take the natural characteristics of an experience, right? Where the Ubers and the Lyfts or the other guys, because they have no real control in the car, there is no real experience. It's subject to whatever uh, that environment has. Well, eCarra is very different, where we control every single experience. You will not ever, ever, ever get into an eCarra managed car and it not be immaculately clean. That's just a part of our culture, just the way it is. And so,
Okay.
even if you look at it from a perspective of, let's say, Tesla, right? Tesla will offer a rideshare component within their network of cars. Well,
Hmm.
just because a Tesla owner has an app that allows them to move people around doesn't mean that he doesn't have a 13-year-old Labrador Retriever that he forgets to clean the dog hairs up in the back.
Right.
So it's all relative to that control. So one, yes, we're emission free, but two, we have these controls and we have this environment and this customer journey that we want to take people through every single time, much like an Apple.
Now, I understand from some of our offline conversations that you are working with a handful of corporations around here, and they're seeing the benefits to using you. Can you share with the audience what some of those benefits are and what you're producing for them?
Yeah, absolutely. I think so. We've been able to really help a lot of corporations. Well, I say a lot. The corporations that we have partnered with, we've been able to show them how, as a corporation, they can participate in emissions reduction by simply changing some of the habits that they're going to do anyway. And so we go in and we offer this amazing platform that they can see, and they can actually help their employees reduce the carbon footprint by using us as a service, getting back and forth to airport transfers and things like that. And so there's a level of trust there, right? And so we have a team that consistently works through picking these people up on a monthly basis, and so there's relationships that form. There's continuity and synergy that happens sometimes when corporations have so many people coming and going. We're able to do carpool services where employees meet for the very first time. It's so dynamic to see that. When you have a very
That is
large,
interesting.
yeah, you have a very large corporation, and they may have 4 or 5 thousand employees, but 2,500 of them live outside of the state. They're
Hmm.
traveling into the HQ here in the North Texas area, and we set them up with a carpool. And guess what? They've met for the very first time in two different departments, and now there's some synergy there in the company with just meeting in the car. So there's all of these cool dynamics that we're able to partner with HQs with just by being a transportation service for them. So emissions reduction, customer retention, because now you have females that travel at night, and in cities like Dallas, not too favorable, but when they know they have a car coming, they know they have somebody who's a family oriented driver who's been vetted in a nice car that's protected and networked so everybody knows where you are. It's just a great sense of safety.
So it sounds like a win-win-win, a win for you, a win for the corporation, and a win for the individuals that are participating.
And that's somewhat what we're trying to accomplish here. We feel like we can get some real energy and movement if it's a win-win-win for everyone. And again, people assume, and I'll take that even down to the cost. People assume, well, it's a Tesla, it's going to be, black car or some, ridiculous price. Well, we can keep our prices the same or lower than most competitive car services in the market simply because we don't have the necessary expenses, right? So we haven't spent 1 cent on energy so far. Maybe a little bit, but we don't spend gas. I mean, there's no gas, no oil changes, no maintenance. All of these things that come with traditional combustion cars, we don't have to deal with. So we pass the savings along to people.
Yeah, it's interesting. Your pricing is competitive to the other rideshare companies.
Yeah, in fact, in our market here in DFW, a Uber Select is $2.80 a mile on average. People don't realize it because Uber's broken that price down and into so many different things. You don't really know what the end result is. But
Hmm.
an Uber X is $1.40 a mile, and eCarra is $1.50 right now. So we're 10 cents more a mile than the lowest entry level ride service that you can get with Uber.
That's really, really interesting.
And by the way, this is just another little nugget. That's with about a 34% margin. So we can even
That's a
get
pretty healthy margin.
right. We can even get better than that if we do things right.
That is interesting. So, Rock, one of the things I like to explore with my guests is, along the lines of Simon Sinek, the why you're doing what you're doing with eCarra. I understand from a monetary perspective, but, what drives you to wake up every morning next to your 3-year-old daughter and say, you know what, today I'm going to go and make the world better. Today I'm going to go, work on eCarra.
Right. That's a great question. Thank you, Raj. Um, you just said it. You just said it. It's my kids. You know, um, as I mentioned a little bit in our earlier conversation, my daughter Mariah Grace was we had to do IVF to have her, and
Hmm.
along that time, I was just thinking about how impossible just being here is, and once we're here, once we're born, we have a mission, we have a assignment to do something for those that are behind us, and so for me, this it's really not about the money because I haven't got a check in 2 years.
Hmm.
But what makes me so happy is that when my daughter and now my 3-month-old son that I know will
Hmm.
never ever ever drive a car. My 3-month-old son and even my 3-year-old daughter will probably never drive a car. They will have to somehow benefit from transportation in the future, and that transportation has to be clean. And so I'm so passionate about this because I know that someday this is going to impact my daughter and her peers,
Hmm.
my son and his peers, and which is probably along the same lines of your kids and their peers, and so for us it's about leaving something, leaving the planet better than we found it, and
Hmm.
it's quite refreshing actually. I don't experience any burnout, or people talk about CEO burnout. This I love this. I really really love this, and because of that, I think we attract the same type of people. Like our team is on board because of the same reasons. Like we look at the fact that okay, we've planted trees, right? And someday we're all going to die, but those trees are still going to be here, and they're going to still be producing oxygen for us to live, and we are excited about that.
Right. So you mentioned a word there, and I'm going to kind of poke at that word a little bit because it tells me a little about your values. So I'm curious. You mentioned the word assignment, and I'd like to go with, what in your value system, where was your aha moment where you decided, this is my assignment, and I'm going to commit the time, the effort, the discipline needed to, to take on this assignment.
Gotcha. Well, earlier when we started the podcast, I mentioned a people business. In my early career, when I left school, I went to Oklahoma and worked at a church there, and I began this career of being in ministry. I was a youth pastor for 15 years. Went to school there in Oklahoma, and so for 15 years, I was every day working with young people, motivating them, and I always had a passion for the younger generations, always. And
Mm-hmm.
so, I always felt that I've had an assignment to do something for the younger generations. It's just been a part of me since I was a teenager. Um,
Mm-hmm.
and so, as I have evolved as an adult, I can see where there's much bigger problems. And so I still have that nature in me to nature the young people. You could put me in a room with, 200 teenagers and I would thrive. You put me in a room with 203 year olds, I would probably stab myself in the leg with a pencil. But, but it was just that I understood who I was and why am I here. And so I always feel like I'm here to do something bigger than myself. It's just a part of me. It's just been that way for a long time.
So, Rock, if there is one piece of advice you could share with the audience, what would it be?
I would say be open to change. I've heard a lot of quotes by very smart people that say things like people only change for two reasons: either they have to or they want to, which is very true. But we all have to do a little changing in order to make our world a better place. I mean, it takes all of us to do that, and I think it's a mix between changing up our diets, changing up how we use certain products and services, changing up how we think about harmful, chemicals and medicines. I think, it's just across the board. I think, change is necessary. We've done great over the last, century as far as advancements in science and transportation and medicine. And so I think those advances were great, but it's time that we re-evolve as mankind. And I think it's difficult, but we can do it. So I would say just stay open-minded to change. Change doesn't really bother me at all. I actually like change. I get bored and complacent.
So, what's some of the most interesting feedback or comments that you've received, when you've picked up a passenger in eCarra?
You know, each one of those. So I did the very first eCarra ride. It was great. I actually picked this guy up. He was in town from being on a long, stench of traveling for business, and he was, had this really desire to have a nice night with his, girlfriend, and we picked him up, and there was roses in the car, and he was just like very excited about the experience, and all he could think
Hmm.
about and all he could talk about was the car. It was like it's like, which I'm trying to make this experience for him so amazing for him and his girl, and all he could think about was, oh man, look at that display, it's beautiful. How does it work? Everybody's
Hmm.
fascinated by the technology. That's probably the most,
Hmm.
I mean, it doesn't matter who it is. I mean, we've picked up some very smart people. All of them were smart, but
Hmm.
I say that in the sense of specific knowledge in specific spaces like technology, and they're still quite fascinated by being able to go down the road and a vehicle at 85 mile an hour without an engine. It's just pretty phenomenal. So yeah, that's probably the most interesting thing is people continually want to talk about the car, the technology in the car.
Do you think you've converted any of your passengers to electric car buyers?
Check this out. So early on, we wanted to do these surveys. Remember, our idea up front was ride brand. It was like, how do we solve a problem for automotive industry? And so we started asking
Hmm.
these random questions up front, like, have you ever ridden an electric car before? And we were 97% no. After 3 or 4 reservations with us, we would ask the question, would you ever consider buying an electric car? And we were 97% yes.
That's
That's
amazing.
amazing. And we knew at that point. Looking at the data, I was like, "Are you kidding me? It's just a matter of making people more aware. I mean, it's not like rocket science. Nobody's gonna. I mean, it's just people just don't know. And so since then, we've had several people convert from their gas car to buying a Tesla. And not only that, we've in some cases become like consultants for people to help buy that next electric car, because there's just so much ambiguity there. People don't understand kilowatts and what that necessarily means in terms of
Hmm.
MPG or things like that. And so there's a there's a knowledge piece of that that's missing, I think, that helps, that's really kind of blocking people from really opening their eyes to it. But yeah, to say the least, we've helped a lot of people this far move over to electric cars. As a matter of fact, now we have people that are members buying us cars. One of your cohorts that actually, one of your comrades have decided to buy a car and let us, lease it by the day and put it into our platform. So it's all kind of really cool things like
Wow.
that happening.
So it sounds like you're doing the education piece, and you're almost doing a top of funnel for some of the OEMs that are making electric cars. Do you have any partnerships that are exploring?
Yes, correct. We knew right off that being in the car business, we knew some of what Tesla's issues would be as it pertains to because they have this direct to consumer business model where they sell direct to consumer. But we knew that even in a dealership model, that's tough. But being in a direct sales environment, it's even tougher, especially with some of the educational obstacles. So there are a lot of the early
Hmm.
adopters were people who just knew a lot about electric cars or technology, right? Or they just took a
Hmm.
risk and it's the new thing in town. But now what we're finding is,
Early
yeah,
adopters.
now that we're finding is like people really want to understand exactly what they're getting themselves into, and Tesla really doesn't have the bandwidth to do that. If you buy a Tesla right now and you get it delivered, you're going to get like a 6 minute spiel and a key and a sayonara in a good way. It's not negative at all. It's just they don't have the bandwidth to sit down and help you understand what gigawatts mean.
Hmm.
So that's kind of some of the things that we do in the car. We talk through that. We talk about how a lot of the energy that we use is direct from the sun. A lot of people don't even know that the sun generates and drops on the earth 84,000 terawatts a day, and we only need 16.
Wow.
People don't know that. And when you look at the energy source from that manner, it's like, wait a minute, why are we shooting and drilling and burning and fighting?
So where do you see eCarra 5 years from now?
Oh, that's a great question. So in 5 years from now, eCarra will be a model for EV mobility all over the world. We will be a support system to EV owners that want to build their own mobility platform in their own town, in their own providence, in their own country, wherever that is, and be detethered from an Uber or a Lyft type of platform. We're building software
Hmm.
that, and this is what's interesting. And I'm not the smartest person in the room, but I can see this happening. There's all over the US and the world now, there's groups of people saying, hey, you know what? I want to start a mobility company and I want to do it like this. I want to employ military guys and I want to go into low income areas and pass those savings along to them. And I want to use very nice electric cars to do it. But guess what? We don't have software platform for that. Well, that's what we want to
Hmm.
help them do. We want to help those groups um, build their own infrastructure, build their own culture, and do their own mobility in those specific spaces and support them with software and tools and guidance and things like that. And so that's kind of where we see ourselves. We started our very first pilot with another company using our platform in Washington D.C. this week, actually.
Oh wow! Congratulations.
Thank you. It's something that we're super proud of. We're very, we've been working really hard on this, and so right now this company in Washington D.C. I'm not going to announce them yet, but they're going to go live here pretty quick. We're doing beta testing with the software with them right in the Washington, Virginia, Woodbridge, Virginia area, and we're excited about that. We think that that's going to help them grow. Now they have an app that they can actually start to build a mobility service much better than the Uber and Lyft experiences right there in Washington. So we love it.
So essentially, are you white labeling your platform for them?
Essentially, yes.
That's excellent. So that's 5 years from now. A year from now, are you planning to franchise out or grow into the other large cities in Texas?
I think all of that's kind of on the table. You know, we don't want to rule out anything. There's so much ambiguity in this space right now. The idea of sharing or white labeling our software, if you would ask me that question up front, I would have said no. But it's just, because of the way things are changing and the way things look, it sounds like it's something that we need to do. And so we're doing it because, again, it's going to help us reach our bigger goal, which is how do we reduce emissions, worldwide, in this
Mm-hmm.
country. It can't just be us. And so we're looking at it from that scope. We do say this, eCarra will always be a brand that is extremely friendly, extremely clean. It's the Apple, merged with the Uber, merged with the Toro. It's all those things combined. It's like,
Mm-hmm.
we have very specific customer journeys. We take people through an experience every single ride. It's not just about getting in the car going A to B. It's about, learning a little bit. It's about getting there safely. It's about getting there and we're planting a tree and doing something, bigger than ourselves. Like all of those things make up what eCarra is. And I think we'll always be
Mm-hmm.
a model.
Well, Rock, I really appreciate your time today. Rock, the nerd. I hope you get to go to outer space, and I'm sure your kids are gonna watch you build this company and be extremely proud of you. So, Rock, thank you so much for your time today, and we look forward to catching up with you in 5 years and seeing where eCarra is.
Thank you so much, Roger. I appreciate you having me on. Loved it anytime.
Thank you, Rock.